What's up everybody, Alex here, and welcome to a Dota Underlords Patch Analysis for November 14th, 2019. Now, there's a few general updates here, and I want to talk about the gameplay as well, but I need to talk to you guys about the jail. Now, what's interesting about this update was that I was actually scripting a video about the jail system, and now they've made this update, and, well, I've got something to say. My initial video was going to be about how the jail system was not working. The jail system was making the game less fun. And the problem is that the changes that they've made have only made the issue worse, and let me explain. Now, I don't want to be overly critical of the Dota Underlords team. They've made a fantastic game, one of my favorite games of all time. And I think the jail mechanic, its heart is in the right place. And I have not had an opportunity yet, because these patch notes were just released. I haven't had a chance to actually fully engage with these patch changes. However, upon reading them, I have a few points that I need to make. First of all, the jail system does not necessarily keep the meta feeling fresh. Now, they've made some changes as to like assassins. For instance, they've moved Morphling away from assassins and into mages. That's later in the patch notes. That's good, a good change. It helps balance the two, because the problem with mages was if you jail someone like the Keeper of the Light, mages is unusable. If you jail Lich, mages is unusable. So the problem was that the jailing system would really impact certain alliances far more than others. Assassins, before this change to Morphling, totally unimpeded. Warriors, borderline completely unimpeded. These were alliances that were almost completely not impacted by these changes. Primordials to some extent as well, right? The only exception would be Enigma, because anytime you lose the ace of any particular alliance, that can be particularly damaging. But overall, you know, the ones that were hardest hit were like Scrappies and Inventors, because of, you know, if you ban Tinker, you're not using Tinker. You're not using Scrappies and Inventors, sorry. If you ban Bristleback, Brawnies are garbage. If you ban Keeper of the Light, Mages are garbage. You ban Lich, Mages are garbage. So you had this situation where on a day-by-day basis, certain alliances were significantly weaker than the others. Now, that kept the meta fresh. Sure, but when playing those games, especially into high-level games, people would recognize that, and you would be forced to play certain alliances. And so that's why you'd have a situation where everyone's going warriors, everyone's going assassins, and everyone's avoiding the alliances that are much more susceptible to the jail system. Now, there's one other thing that's important to note with the jail system. Now, they've increased the complexity of it in some ways. The actual rules around the jail system have increased, and now you can have 3 heroes from a single alliance band, and that means that they won't be fully completable. This is important because, as someone who recommends games to tons of people, my favorite thing is helping people find their next favorite game. And Dota Underlords has been one of my absolute favorite games, and I have suggested almost every person I've spoken to said, hey, Alex, what's the game I should be playing? I say Dota Underlords. You know what the problem is? So many of the people that I've been recommending this game to have bounced off it, especially recently. I have been saying, hey, the big update's out, Underlords are in, this game is the best it's ever been. Everyone that I've put towards this game has bounced off, and they've all identified the jail system as confusing, not fun, and difficult to engage with as a relative beginner. Regardless if you're in casual or in ranked, the jail system's in effect, and some people are really turned off by it. The jail system does benefit some of the more, I don't want to say hardcore players, but the players that are really up to date with what's going on, like players like you that watch these videos and know the ins and outs of each hero and the alliances and stuff like that. It benefits you. But however, the issue is that people that are just very casually playing the game, and these people are still important to the overall ecosystem of Dota Underlords, it really makes this game harder for them to grasp. And it doesn't necessarily add to the skill ceiling of it. It does in some ways, but straight up making an alliance not completable does not really make the game any more engaging for a casual or even a hardcore player. If suddenly you can't complete the mage alliance, yes, of course you don't need to complete all 6 to have a desired effect, but that just steers people away from the overall, like, like the overall beauty of what this game is. Like, I make guides. And there are by far the most viewed things on my small little channel. And I really take pride in that, and I'm thankful for every single view that I get. But the thing guys have to understand is that the real talent in Dota Underlords is not necessarily adhering strictly to any one guide or any one build, and that's why my builds of the week have 5, at least 5, because the real skill in this game is being able to quickly kind of move from one build to another, being able to identify which situations warrant which builds and which situations don't warrant other builds. Being flexible is the true skill of Dota Underlords, and I share the builds of the week because what they do is they put into your mind all the different possibilities that are of very high tier that you can kind of shift and engage with throughout the game. Now, what this change has done is it's made it so that some alliances outright can't be changed, can't be completed, sorry, and it's also made it so that aces are being banned. So if, for instance, say the Troll Warlord is banned, and nobody's really rolling trolls anyway, people just don't try and use trolls to counter any of the other classes. Warriors don't even have an ace, so they're not going to be as impacted as others. Then you have assassins. If they lose, for instance, the Void, Faceless Void, that does impact them, but perhaps not even as much as it might impact, say, Primordials, who can really take advantage of the fact that the Void Cube basically allows their spawns to continue attacking the units stuck in it. So it really does impact the game in a very unpredictable way. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm not convinced that the jail system is making Dota Underlords better. I want to hear your opinion on it. All opinions are absolutely valid because this is a complex issue, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep the meta fresh day by day, so you don't have a situation where, one set build is the build to do. It's happened in the past. I've covered those builds. But what they've done instead is they've created this underlying complexity to the game that makes it very hard to engage with for the average and casual player. And I don't know if that's good for the long-term health of this game, especially when you consider that its numbers are going down. The big update gave the game a bit of a boost, but overall, Dota Underlords is kind of on a bit of a slide. And so stuff like this really, really makes it harder for new players to engage with it meaningfully. So solutions? I don't know. Do we only jail in ranked mode and perhaps keep it open in casual? Do we get rid of jail altogether and simply, as the roster of heroes increases, you're going to increase the variety of builds available to each individual player? The other option is you know what? This is the kind of thing that gets me. If everyone is going assassins, perhaps you could have more of a rock, paper, scissors element to this game where, it naturally does exist where assassins are less effective against warriors, highly effective against mages. So, if you see everyone's going assassins, you go warriors. But the problem is that the jail system can make it so that now you can't get to the 6 warrior bonus. You can't get to the, to the full scrappy and inventor bonus. So suddenly you're in a very interesting situation. So of course they're going to be continuing to look at this and they're going to tweak it, but I wanted to make a video and at least hold a discussion as to whether or not the jail system was actually beneficial to Dota Underlords as a whole, because I'm looking at these changes and honestly I don't feel like this makes the game better. It will for, big boss games and the high level games, but that accounts for such a small population of the people that play this game. So many of you guys play casual. So many of you guys are in ranks all throughout the ranks of Dota Underlords, right? We're not all in the White Spire. So, it's really important that we're able to engage with this game in a very meaningful way, and I don't know if the jail system's doing that. Moving on. So the other thing I really want to highlight here was the increase in round damage. So this is back. This was part of the earlier beta season as well. I'm actually really happy with this change. Now, not only is it going to make the game faster, which is obvious, and a lot of people might look towards that and say, hey, it's making the games faster because they're like 15 minutes long. what it's also doing is punishing people for hoarding gold and simply leveling up. It's a bit of a nerf to the good stuff type strategies where you kind of just hold on to units, survive for a bit, roll with druids, sell them off, and then pick up, Kunkkas and Tide Hunters and Aces as they come, where you're not really building alliance synergies. You are, but you're not, but rather you're just trying to grab the best units you can, and that's always been a viable strategy. This hurts that, because you're not going to be able to take damage in those early rounds as effectively as you will be, as you were previously. So this prevents people from just tanking the early rounds in order to build up their economies. It increases the risk of not rolling early to basically have a stronger front to reduce incoming damage. So a very interesting change. I am actually happy to see that this is back. I've already spoken about the jail system, obviously. Now, the Underlord changes are very significant. The idea that casting is not tied to hype anymore is very important. Hype is going to increase damage and cooldown regeneration, or cooldown speed, I should say. So very interesting. They've also reduced the overall power of the Dota Underlords heroes, which is extremely important because the Dota Underlords themselves were very, very powerful, especially Hobgen now. He could literally carry the late game all by himself. So now overall rank 8 is going to be roughly the max of their strength. So the equivalent of the old version of rank 8. Sorry. So if you were level 8, even if you're level 10 now, they're still roughly as they were at level 8. So definitely in the late game, they're definitely been reduced. I'm interested in testing these changes. I think that overall this is going to make the game better. And again, it even says here, we didn't like how there was a skewed leveling versus rolling, because they're right. It was almost always better to level up as opposed to roll, and it goes right in hand with the good stuff type synergies where, you're better off not leveling, Enchantress to 3. I just bumped my mic, sorry. You're better off not leveling Enchantress to 3 and pulling a Gyrocopter at 1 star eventually later in the game, and then getting Scrappies and stuff like that, and not Scrappies, I meant Techies. So definitely a good change. And you're looking at, again, so the changes from the hype, obviously. So hype is just going to be it's no longer going to be resulting in casts and whatnot. An interesting change here. The armor per level of Phantom Pain is an interesting change, because this was one of the things that really made an Essex still viable. Obviously, the other cooldown changes as well, and the modifications to Martyr's Boon does increase her healing potential, but the armor gained in Phantom Pain really did synergize well with a lot of builds. It was kind of like a low-key, really good build that I was kind of planning to do a guide on, actually. So they kind of got ahead here and made a few changes here. So it'll be interesting to test an Essex here. Overall, very good. Much more leaning towards support and healing than before, which is a good change. I think that an Essex's ability to keep a team up is extremely valuable. Hobgen was a disaster right now. Had to get changed. Let's Go Crazy, and all the skills around, the silencing abilities around, Keep It Secret, especially Molten Armor. These were absolutely game breaking. Now, one of the things that I'm surprised they didn't do was, now they reduced the effectiveness of Keep It Secret and Molten Armor. What I probably might have played with at first, now I'm no game designer, but perhaps putting them at putting them on the same level tier so you could only ever have one might have been a bit of a solution, because the problem was that you could take Molten Armor and then you could take Keep It Secret, and suddenly Hobgen was an absolute wrecking ball, actually wrecking fireball. And so interesting change overall. Hobgen had to get brought down a little bit. I'm going to reserve judgment until I do significant testing on these two Underlords. But overall, these are changes that I think had to happen, and they make a lot of sense here. Anti-Mage is going to be burning more hype. Interesting change as well. So it's going to be able to kind of counteract the Underlord's abilities to just basically ramp up in damage and casting. The cube had to kind of get reduced in duration, of course. And again, this is a shadow nerf to Primordials and Hunters, because with that Chrono Cube, so much ranged damage was still being applied to units stuck in the cube, right? So a very, very interesting thing, because like assassins, they're all, well, they're melee heroes, so if they're stuck in the cube, which they probably are, they're not really doing any DPS, whereas the Faceless is. But the ranged spawns and hunters and stuff like that, they're still just hammering away, Hobgen hammering away at everyone in the cube, so a very good change. And again, this makes sense. Give Faceless Void a little bit more damage. You know, this makes sense as well, so you're not just getting, you're not getting free cooldown, especially on someone like, you know, the bear, what am I talking about? Lone Druid. You know, you're going to have Lone Druid die, then come back, spawn another bear. It was crazy. Keeper of the Light, this is a nerf. Basically what you're seeing here, yes, it goes up at tier 3, but how often do you get a tier 3, you know, Keeper of the Light? Usually top him out at tier 2, and, you know, you see a bit of, you know, a damage reduction in the earlier game here, but, and he's going to take longer to cast, which is interesting. Morphling, this is the most significant change here. You're going from assassin to mage. Make no mistake, Morphling is a great hero. One of the heroes that has been generally going underneath the radar. This is a good change. It does boost mage significantly. This gives mage a hero that is you can lean on in the early game because, and I will argue that Crystal Maiden has been so much better than people give her credit for. But now with Crystal Maiden and Morphling, and you know, yeah, you can start with Razor too, but overall, these are great. This is a great lineup for mages up front. But again, if you lose Keeper of the Light, if you lose Lich, I don't know how viable they are. I really don't. But we'll have to test. And again, waveform being increased in damage, but it also comes with an increase in tier as well. So a rare hero Morphling. So that is an impact. So you're going to be starting with someone like Maiden, obviously Razor as well, and then moving into Morphling. Whereas before you'd have Morphling a little earlier. You can get Morphling like first couple levels. So very good. Weaver. Going from Hunter to Elusive makes perfect sense. I don't know why Weaver was ever a Hunter in the first place. Very ineffective Hunter. But an Elusive makes a lot more sense. So we'll have to see how we can synergize insects with Elusives a little bit. I'm interested in testing that out. And then you have some item changes as well. Smuggler removed from the game. This breaks my heart. Smuggler was one of my absolute favorite things to take in the game, but it makes sense. This was such a win more skill item, I should say, because it quite frankly just gave you the opportunity to steamroll in the early game, especially if you were on top. If you were on top and you got Smuggler, it was pretty much GG for everyone else because you'd be pulling Daedalus so early. You'd be pulling, you know, the tier 5 items earlier than everyone else, and it would just create a snowballing situation. So a good change. Overall, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. I really do want to hear your thoughts, specifically about the jail. This jail system, I'm going to test it out, but well, I've spoken at length about it, but I'm really debating whether or not the jail system legitimately helps Dota Underlords or not. Thank you so much for watching, guys, especially to all my subscribers. I really enjoy sharing this stuff with you, if you can mind my crazy rants every once in a while. Take care, everyone, and have yourselves a wonderful day.